they don't have those kind of things. Yeah, I guess because their wallet.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit less to have to worry about, and also,
I'm recording now, just so you know.
oh, okay. Just a little simpler as far as like girls are involved in fashion and they want this and that, and like, I feel like it's simpler with the boys, because less boys want like, oh, I want that first, it's really expensive, guys like.
Yeah.
it's
Do you
really
think
valuable.
guys spend less on? Okay, a teenage guy. Do you think he spends less on money than the typical teenage girl? Less money on fashion.
Probably.
There must be fashionable guys too, right? But like,
Oh, there are, don't get me wrong, I'm just saying the average guy versus the average girl, like if the same family had two kids, one was a boy, one was a girl, the girl's kind of bound to spend more on like clothes and makeup
Yeah.
and purses.
you know, actually today's class, I'm going to talk about that from an ethical perspective. The reason I haven't given you your assignments back, guys, is I've been having a crazy, crazy time in my life, but in a very positive way. I'm on a natural high, I'm very productive, and I'm also reordering the rest of the course because I'm constantly thinking what's in the best interest of my students. And sometimes that means you have to make adjustments in order to be spontaneous, in order to respond to new information. You know, following the textbook might not always be in the best interest of your students or your audience. I mean, my textbook is great. I'm using several textbooks, but that's why I haven't given you back all of your papers. Some of you have gotten them back, but you'll be getting the rest of them back very, very soon. And another reason I'm taking longer to give them back to you, I just realized that since you're all using Microsoft Word, I can use a commenting feature. So instead of commenting all at the bottom, like I can go in and go directly to what I want to comment on. So that's going to take more time, but it's also going to be more meaningful, you know, for you. So guys, yeah, sorry about the delay. I know you want to get feedback. And also you have this ethics thing coming up, paper, and I'm thinking about it and I'm like, I need to figure out how I can give you what you need so you can really think about writing that paper the right way. And there's just all this good stuff I want to share with you, but I got to figure out how to do it properly. So yeah, so that's it. I've been delayed because of many good things happening, but those good things happening are all in your best interest. So work with me and thank you. Now today, guys, we're going to continue with what we did last time, but it's going to be another spontaneous kind of day because what's going on basically is I've taught this class so many times that I've now identified how much time I need to spend on foundational stuff, and then how much time I can spend now on spontaneous stuff and current event type stuff that will really sink in what ethics really is. Because that's what I'm writing my dissertation on. And another good thing, guys, I've decided the last class, I'm going to share with you a PowerPoint that I've designed that will share with you kind of what I'm doing. This way, you'll know philosophy as a practical thing. Like if someone gets a PhD in philosophy, what kind of presentations will they be doing? What does their dissertation kind of look like? And what does the research look like? So far, you've only known me as a teacher. And I'm pretty cool, if I must say. However, I want to share with you the other aspect of being an academic or a professor, which is research. And that's another thing that I do, and I'm getting better at it, and I'm getting feedback. And so today I gave a talk through Zoom to my department. I shared it with them. It took about 45 minutes. So I presented it, the PowerPoint, and then they gave me feedback and asked questions. We had a good time. And that's what I'm going to share with you later. Okay? The last day, I think. Okay, guys. Today, now in the background, guys, there's these ethical theories, right? But that statement itself is very problematic. The ethical theories. What's wrong with that, guys? The ethical theories according to who? Think about that question. Who gets to dictate what is an ethical theory and what isn't? And who gets to dictate the significance or the importance of something even being an ethical theory? Why do we need all this theoretical activity? Can you see where I'm going with that? What I'm trying to get you to see is there are interests involved here. There's probably a community of people who have an interest in holding up these traditional theories as the only true theories or the only plausible theories. You see what I'm saying? A bunch of academics and professors, people doing academic and professional philosophy, they are going to stereotype what ethics is. And today's lesson, Dante, is for you, Dante, okay? It's directed directly at you. It's going to be a philosophy of Dante and his anatomy and physiology and psychology and how to study him without a microscope. How are you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
Good. So, here we go. I want you to keep in the background what I'm saying, guys. Stereotypes aren't just for ignorant people. That's what I'm saying. Professors and academics also have stereotypes. I shared a little bit of that with you last time, right? A couple of philosophers saying things about gender and race. Today we're going to continue with that theme. I'm going to share with you a few videos to show you what I believe an open-minded person would see ethical activity being. So academics and philosophers and professors, they might say, oh, only virtue ethics is real ethics. Only deontology is real ethics. Only divine command theory is real ethics. Only consequentialism, that's real ethics. But today is a whole lesson in opening your mind, being spontaneous, and deconstructing all of these artificial things and systems that people claim are the exclusive only frameworks we have. You see what I'm saying? This is very important. Guys, don't worry. I will introduce formally, I'll finish up with consequentialism at some point. It will be very quick, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. I'll finish up with deontology, what you really need to know, and I'll finish up with virtue ethics. But what I'm telling you now is the type of thing I wish someone had told me, and I feel like this will mature you a lot more faster than memorizing a bunch of technical rules, okay? All right, guys, so I have 4 videos I want to share with you. My opinion is that each one of these videos shows an ethical activity, but this will not show up in most textbooks. I don't think anyone will call these ethical activity, but I want you to tell me whether you agree with me that they're ethical activity. As you watch these videos, here are the questions I want you to keep in mind. Today is going to be fun. I'm very excited. All right. Keep in mind this question. What does ethical activity look like? Is ethics something only philosophers do? Or can you find ethics outside of the university? Can you find ethics in the military, in the church, in the government, and even in the common people, the common folk? Do they have ethics without theorizing about it? Is ethics always a technical, exact, and absolutist science that only exists in academic and professional philosophy? Or is it something more fluid and spontaneous and cultural and relative? And what I just said about ethics, please ask yourself the exact same questions about aesthetics. Who gets to dictate what's beautiful and what's not? That's an extremely important question, especially for today's young women who are getting their role models from Instagram. You see why this is relevant? This is huge. You can carve a quote unquote sculptured perfect image of a model or a supermodel on Instagram, and you'll have 1 million followers, mostly young women, impressionable young women, who now judge themselves by that standard. So they either aspire to be it or they get suicidal because they can't. You see why this is important? All right, first video coming up. This is practical ethics to me, guys. This is not going to be a whole bunch of theory. This is just going to be a bunch of, wokeness, waking you up. Okay, here we go.
such an asshole.
AssholeConsulting.com. By the way, if you haven't, I know my world is compartmentalized. A lot of you just watch the YouTubes, a lot of you just do the podcast, but you don't go to the blog, you don't go to the other. Check out my blog, CaptainCapitalism.blogspot.com. Some great photos there of the motorcycle ride. I know not all of you are motorcycle riding, but we went to Gateway, Colorado, and dude, it's just some beautiful stuff. So, and everything's so sad and dark and doomy and gloomy and DACA and terrorist attacks. Go and have a little bit of fun and enjoy the decline and go look at some pretty pictures. Anyway, Shirley writes, "Hi, asshole. I've been a minimalist for about 2 to 3 years. I spend about $5,000 a year and includes everything, rent, food, etc. Are you single? Because there'd probably be some gentlemen that would love to date you if you are that frugal and of the female persuasion. I have enjoyed my simple life because it gives me time to think, enjoy nature, and time to enjoy my life. Sometimes I think if my transition to the minimalist lifestyle came from the fact that I was unable to handle the competition. From a very young age, I've seen people being very competitive, political, cutthroat, cunning, and I dislike those traits. But lately, I have been reevaluating the events of my life and have started to wonder, maybe my thinking is wrong, and have now come to accept the reality that we are all animals, and we compete for resources and power because of our instincts to survive. Greed, status, and selfishness in family, friendship, work, and in countries is starting to make a lot of sense these days. There seems to be no escape from competition and politics." Let me interrupt you right here, though. I did take notes on this, but then I just noticed this. But lately I've been reevaluating the events of my life and have started to wonder, maybe my thinking is wrong, and have now come to accept reality that we are animals. We all compete for resources and power because of our instinct to survive. But think about minimalism. This just answers your question immediately. The whole point of minimalism is that you don't need that much in resources. And you said it right here, vanity, which I'm going to go over later, that's resources you don't need to consume. Completely unnecessary. Wasting your time at the office to buy shit you don't need. So the whole point of minimalism is to avoid this cutthroat political office bullshit. I mean, everyone's got to deal with it a little bit, unless you come from rich parents that you got particularly lucky when you were younger. But everyone's got to go through this. And dude, trust you and me, the money ain't worth it. It is not that I ever had a lot of money to begin with, but what money I did make, I like, yeah, that wasn't worth it. That was totally not worth it. And so kind of maybe you couldn't compete. I could never make enough money because of my mouth. Because my fucking brain, everyone else is a fucking moron. And I do mean that. I do absolutely mean that to all you banking fuckers who couldn't see the housing crash coming. Anyway, neither here nor there. But you just kind of answered it like, the whole point of minimalism is to be free so you don't need the resources and you don't have to compete for it. Let the dickwad soccer moms duke it out for the Range Rovers. Let the idiot wannabe bank dude bros with the gray hair duke it out for that precious loan that they got to get their commission on so they can go and lease a car because they can't afford a real one. All right, let them do that's them. You don't need a Beamer. You don't need a Range Rover. You don't need a McMansion, which means you don't have to tolerate that shit. So that's the whole point of minimalism is to avoid that. There seems to be no escape from competition in politics because it is evolutionarily programmed into us and is part of human nature. Understand this fact. I've been thinking if I need to reorient my life values and become more competitive because minimalist and libertarian ideals seem not be so effective. What do you think? I would love to hear your thoughts. Well, see, and that's just funny because you're succeeding at minimalism. You get by on $5,000 a year. And you get to spend time in nature and spend time on yourself. You get more of your life to you. You know, everybody roughly lives till about 80. And all these workaholics and these, look at Hillary Clinton. There's a perfect example. Oh my God. What percent of her life has been lived having fun? None of it. It's all power and money and greed and power and greed and money. She got a daughter somewhere there, and the daughter had a kid somewhere. You think Hillary Clinton spends time with her granddaughter? Hell no. But you are succeeding already. I don't see why you have to go and compete. So, all right, let's go and let's talk about it. I did take some notes here. All right. First, what you're observing is 100% true. Greed, cutthroat, immorality, everything, that is part of human nature, most humans. There are some more moral ones. There are some good people. But by and large, humans are driven by two things. One, your Darwinistic goal of basically getting an unlimited supply of money and resources, kind of the fuck you position, fuck you money, to be independently wealthy. And the other one, which I don't understand, is vanity or popularity. Like, oh, we have to be the, and I see it with my eyes, but I can't believe it. Like, I got a buddy who lives in a rather well-to-do suburb of Denver, and he's showing me all these people and all these cars they all got leased, and they're all up to their necks in debt. And he's like, yeah, that person over there, he lives paycheck to paycheck, and that gal over there, she lives paycheck to paycheck. I'm like, they're in these massive houses. And for what? For what? For vanity, for to show off. But I don't get it. All I'm saying is that is so ingrained. It's like, I may not understand it, but I do accept that that is part of human nature, all right? And so these two things, one, to get fuck you money and be independently wealthy. And then also to buy shit for vanity's sake. Just so I guess you can be queen bee of the neighborhood or a big dick on the farm or whatever people piss away the money on for whatever reason why. This leads to all the behaviors that you're talking about. Competition, cutthroat, office politics, backstabbing, all this other shit that these people pursue is a direct result of them having to have it all. And if they don't have it, which is the majority of they can't afford it, the majority of people's cases, they will borrow the money to do it. And then when you get someone who is like living paycheck to paycheck and they have all this and they got to keep up the facade. I've told the story before. I'll tell it again. Let me tell you the story again. There was this couple. They made $500,000 a year. They were rich, okay? And they had gotten the most amount of money they qualified for together for a mortgage. And they bought this house with it, and they didn't furnish it. That's the whole point. So to have a house opening party, this veritable mansion, they invite the neighbors over. They didn't have enough money to furnish it. So what did they do? They rented furniture for that one night and then returned it all. Okay? That's insanity. That's bullshit. And if you get to that point in life, you're psychotic. And you will say, fuck morals. And you will say, fuck what's right. I will backstab Jim because Jim's doing better than me. I will fabricate, I will tinker with Amy's report and put a bunch of spelling errors in there. I will doctor though. I mean, this is where you get into, I guarantee you there's a direct connection between the amount of debt people have, their McMansions and their cars and on their student loans, and whether or not they're backstabbing people and cheating at work or embezzling your either outright criminal or at least unethical behavior. So that is what they'll do, anything, lie, rob, cheat, steal, so that they can have those two things. Now, just because they do it doesn't mean you should. And to be very blunt and direct to you and pretty much all my listeners, we're superior people to them. We are. The minimalist, or at least the person that puts family and loved ones and their fellow man first and foremost in their life, they're better people. They're smarter, they're more moral, they're not pissing away their life. They're just better in every capacity, moral, mental, everything. And you don't want to be the people participating in the Joneses battle. You don't want to be the soccer mom who's got to whine and hold out sex from her husband so she can get a Range Rover that they can't afford. You don't want to be these people. You're better than them. And not only are you a better person morally than them, you're going to live, and you are living, a better life than they are. Because again, we all die at about 80, right? And unless you're particularly starving, which most people in the United States and Western civilization aren't, there is no real reason to be chasing after wealth. Hey, now, look, is it nice to make $1 million? Absolutely. I don't know. I'm just going to assume it is. Would it be nice to win the lottery? Sure. But if you get to the point you're at right now where you like life, you only have this X amount of finite life on this planet, and you'd rather spend it doing what you want, well, then you're richer than Steve Jobs was ever, because he worked until he was dead. These people who are in debt, I see them when they come and take my class. Not all of them, but I see I went through divorce and the house, not at 59, it's time to get serious about retirement. Like, it's over. You're going to work till you're dead. You don't want to emulate these people. Not to say there's anything wrong with competition or free market or being your best. There's nothing wrong with that. But that should be a pursuit for your own personal satisfaction. Like, I want to be the best pole vaulter. I want to be the best Python programmer. I want to be the best wood maker. That's fine, all right? But it is not, it's for healthy competition. It's for craftsmanship. It's for achievement and legacies. You can point, aha, I'm a very skilled computer programmer. Right? But it is not to engage in competition with these lampreys, with these parasites, with these weasels. There's no reason you should ever want to become like these people. So I just, that's basically, I know I said I had to, and I did, I had to sit and think this one through. Oh, that's very interesting. You know, humanity competes, yeah, but look at humanity. Look at 98% of them. Do you want to be those fuck knobs? Have you seen the average American? Do you want to be this debt-laden, worthless, degreed fuck with no hope, and all they can do is point to their shoes or their bling or whatever else it is, and that's what they've been. They're so common, they're so inferior, they actually believe the shit they're told on TV. Get a worthless degree and buy shit and crap that I don't. Can you want to be those people? No way, dear. You are already infinitely better than the average bear, and I'm not joking. There's probably a lot of guys down in the comments section below saying, what, a woman that spends $5,000 a year? Hell yes. And not only because you're saving money, but that is the sign of an intellect or a very interesting person, someone with an interesting philosophy. Hell no, do not go and become one of these people. Do not participate in their game. It's kind of like, hey, we're with the herpes and we're with the STD infected swingers club so we all can spread our STDs. Do you want to play in that game? Do you want to piss your life away? No, absolutely not. Anyway, yeah, if you want to pursue what the lemmings pursue, and that is independent wealth, which is okay if you can get it, but the other thing is the vanity. You are now going to have to sacrifice the number one most important thing in your life, and that is your time. And I'm sorry, once I get a certain modicum of income coming in, I don't need any more money. I'd rather have my time. You know, right here, it's kind of like, I got to do this now. Standing, it's, not my office. I got to do it when I can. Because the fuck if I ain't riding my motorcycles out in the West this month. I think you should be perfectly happy where you are. And if you want, try to figure out a way if you can watch American Beauty. And even that doesn't do it. I'm trying to find a place where you can go, because you can't see it. That's the thing. You can't see the vanity. You can't see the horrible finances. You just can't see it because everything looks. This is why I think poor people are a little bit envious than they should be of rich people, because poor people see, oh, the guy's got his Beamer and he's got this boat. And like, trust me, as a banker and seeing their financial, they don't have that boat. They don't have that car. It's the bank's boat. It's the bank's car. It's the bank's house. These people are, I'd rather be poor and have like no debt than be these assholes with 2.5 million in assets and 2.6 million in debts. So you can't see it because it looks all pretty and glittery, but I guarantee you behind that are miserable fucking people. Miserable. I'll give you another example. Let me tell you a little story, and then we'll go. Lake Minnetonka down into the west, south and to the west of the WBL. It's a big lake on the western side of the Twin Cities. And this is where all the new money goes. This is where the Cargills are. This is where the Daytons are. This is where the Pillsburys are. This is where, I think the guy who created Breathe Right nasal strips. So anyway, we take a tour. You could sign up. You go on this boat and you get a brunch, I think for $35, and they show you all the rich houses. So we're with friends. And he says, yeah, I know somebody who lives in that house. And this was not a big mansion. It was a nice house, but it wasn't the big mansions, but still very, like Minnetonka, where? And he says, yeah, she runs a makeup company. I'm like, Estee Lauder? L'Oreal? Because, that's the type of fucking money out there. He's like, oh, no, it's some bullshit multi-level marketing thing she does. I'm like, what? They live on Lake Minnetonka? It'd be like Winnetka, the Hamptons, and you find out wifey who runs a multi-level marketing, does Amway or something like that. He's like, oh yeah, she's not making any money. I'm like, huh? And then it dawns on you, wait a minute, how delusional is that woman living on Lake Minnetonka? Like, what has daddy got or the husband got to do to work to provide for this lifestyle? Does he have an equally shitty job? And then you realize, wait a minute, it's all Potemkin villages, PTO. Look it up. It's all plastic because it's credit cards that's being built off of. Some of it is legitimate wealth. I'm quite sure the Pillsburys do have a lot of money. If you have any single daughters, send them my way. No, I'm already spoken for. But yeah, it's dude, you just be a minimalist. You do not want to participate in the rat race. It's not worth it. Only rats participate in the rat race. I do mean rats. I mean inferior fucking piece of shit human rats. And fuck them. You go live a better life. All right. You guys got questions? Go to assholeconsulting.com. Read my books. You can find them on Amazon.com. Search Aaron Clarey, AARONCLAREY. And then I got the Clarey podcast. You can find that on SoundCloud.com. We'll see you guys later. Toodles.
Okay. So the lesson here is about, like I said, look at those questions I gave you. What does ethical activity look like, right? If you had a big brother and he's like 10 or 20 years older than you, and he pulls you aside to have a beer with you and tell you a few things, what would that look like? Would that just be, a big brother speaking? Or could that be some real ethical advice? Do you see the point I'm trying to make? Ethical advice might not look like what you think it is, because if I tell you that ethics is deontology, virtue ethics and consequentialism, you'll either go to Wikipedia or look at some sort of textbook, right? In my opinion, that is ethical activity, but it's not the stereotypical ethical activity. You see what I'm saying? He's vulgar, he uses curse words, he's on YouTube. I mean, he takes anyone on YouTube seriously. He has a background in finance, and he did go to college, but he became an accountant, worked in a bank, and then eventually just went his own way. So my point is simply this. I'm trying to show you that philosophy itself and what we call ethics can be a form of snobbery, and therefore is also unethical in certain cases. You see what I'm saying? If there's gatekeeping on who's in and who's out, you see what I'm saying? I don't know. Am I clear? If someone is keeping the gate on who's in, who's an ethicist and who's not an ethicist, what is ethical and what's not ethical, do you see how it's a bunch of professors who only publish things that agree with them, and that's snobbery or elitism or something like that? Do you see where I'm going with that? Now, you may or may not agree with his minimalism. Like maybe that's not accurate. I don't know. But I do think he's sincere. I think he cares. You see what I'm saying? Can you feel the care, sincerity? Like he's saying, look, there's someone out there who needs to hear this. That kind of thing, right? All right, I'll leave it there. But keep in mind the snobbery too. We're on YouTube. Maybe people on YouTube should not be taken seriously.
Florida, make a plan to vote early before time runs out. If you don't vote early, you can still vote on Election Day, November 3rd. Who you vote for is secret, but whether you vote is public information. Your friends, family, and neighbors can look up your voting record. Make a plan to vote early.
I had an interesting experience the other day. I went to the keg. I go there because I have food allergies, and they're very careful with people who have food allergies. And the waiter took me to the table, and he said that he had been watching my lectures, and that's a very common experience. And he was happy about that, and he said that he'd had 2 promotions at the keg in the last 4 months because he'd been watching my lectures. And I really found that an affecting experience because, you might say, well, he's working as a waiter at the keg, and there's nothing particularly heroic about that. And I disagree with that, actually, because I don't care where you're located, you can do a hell of a job, and I mean that literally. You can take whatever job you have, and you can make it a real nice little piece of absolute misery. Or you can act like a civilized human being and notice that no matter where you are, there's a richness and a complexity that's completely inexhaustible right at hand. And then you can take that seriously, and you can say, well, I happen to be a waiter at the Keg, and he's a young guy, and perhaps that isn't where I want to end up, but it's not nothing. It's a rich environment, and I can make it a lot better if I want to. I can get along properly with my coworkers and not gossip behind their back, and I can treat my customers properly, and if an opportunity comes my way, I can take it, and I can see what happens. And so he said that's what he'd started doing, and that things were working out much better for him. He was in a much better job than he was 3 months ago. And 3 months, that's nothing, right? I mean, that's a nice trajectory. It's an uphill trajectory, and that's what you want, really. An uphill trajectory is actually even better than being somewhere good, as far as I'm concerned, because one of the things that really makes your life meaningful is the clear realization that you're headed somewhere better than you are now. And then it's even better if you also understand that there's a direct causal relationship between the things that you're doing and the steepness of that incline. And so I get a lot of letters from people like that, and they say, well, you know, I've been listening to these lectures, and I decided that I'm going to try to take responsibility for my life, and so I've started to stop doing all the stupid things that I know that are stupid that I know I shouldn't be doing, and I've started doing some of the things that aren't stupid that I know I should be doing, which seems pretty obvious, really, if you think about it. But obvious though it may be, that isn't necessarily what people do. And then they write and say, you can't believe what difference that makes. And they're thrilled about it. And so I'm thrilled about it when I get letters like that, because I really don't experience anything as better than a letter like that or a message like that, because it's so good to see things that aren't so good replaced by something better. And I really do think it's an open question. I truly believe it's an open question to what degree we could make things better if that's what we actually aimed at doing. Well, there's two modes of being in the world, right? There's one where you adopt the responsibility for living properly, for being properly, and you make the sacrifices necessary for doing that, and then everything will flourish properly. And the other one is a pathway of resentment and bitterness and rejection and murder and genocide, and that just seems exactly right to me. And so if the positive path beckons, if you can actually see what it is, if you can lower yourself enough to see what it is. Carl Jung said once that modern people didn't see God because they didn't look low enough. It's a phrase I really, really like, because people denigrate the opportunities that are right in front of them. And there's no reason to do that, because what's right in front of you is the majesty of being. That's what's right in front of you. It's inexhaustibly complex and full of potential, and there's no reason to assume that wherever you happen to be isn't as good a starting place as anywhere else. Now, you know, I know some people have terrible, terrible lives. They're in situations that are absolutely unbearable. But I also do know that even situations like that can be made a hell of a lot worse by the worst kind of attitude, that's for sure. So anyway, so that's where you are. You're in a damaged structure. You're a damaged structure. You're in a damaged structure. But, you know, at least it's got some walls. You know, you're not being fed to the lions on a regular basis, so that's a good thing. And you can emerge forward heroically to confront the chaos that constantly threatens the structure within which you live. And you can free something as a consequence of that. You can learn something. You can strengthen yourself. That's the other thing, because what you're actually made of, in many ways, that what informs you, what you're made of, is what you encounter when you voluntarily encounter the unknown. And so the more you voluntarily encounter the unknown, the more you get made of. And the more you get made of, the more there is to you. And then the more you're good at encountering the unknown and restructuring order and calling forth proper order out of the potential of being. And God, you got to think, why wouldn't you do that, since you can do that? And it's an endless mystery. You know, I think part of it is that people don't aspire to the highest good because they're deeply ashamed of themselves and their weaknesses and their insufficiencies. And that's not the only reason. I mean, there's the desire to avoid responsibility, and there's all the negative motivations as well, like resentment and hatred, and the desire to make things worse. I don't want to, you know, give us too much of a break, but it's something like that. It's okay to not be in a very good place if what you're trying to do with that not very good place is make it better. And the fact that things aren't exactly the way they should be at least gives you something to do, you know, and maybe something great to do, because there's no shortage of suffering and trouble that besets the world that you could conceivably ameliorate in some way. And the utility of that and the intrinsic meaning of that is self-evident. So it also makes me curious about nihilism, for example, and despair, because I mean, I understand those emotions, I understand them deeply, and the intellectual mindset that goes along with it, but they just seem beside the point to me in some sense, because there are so many things that need doing that all you really have to do is open your eyes and look at them and then decide that you're actually going to do something about them. And you might think, well, what's within my scope of influence is so trivial that it's not worth doing. It's like, it won't stay trivial for long if you do it. Not at all, and I don't think it's trivial to begin with. I really don't believe that anything done right is trivial. My experience in my life has been that anything I actually did paid off. It didn't pay off necessarily in the way that I expected it to pay off. That's a whole different story. But if it was genuine commitment to do something, even if it went sideways and the outcome was really something other than what I expected, the net consequence over time was nothing but good. So every new frontier that can be conquered is an advance forward, and there's no shortage of frontier because we're surrounded by the unknown. We're surrounded by our own ignorance, and we can continually move into that domain, into the domain of chaos, or we can restructure pathological order, and that's the secret to proper being. And so then you encounter chaos that way, and then you can regard yourself as the sort of entity that, despite its insufficiency, has the capability to conquer chaos, despite the danger of that. That's the other thing, because the fact that you're fragile is actually a precondition for your heroism, because if you weren't fragile, then there'd be nothing heroic about doing something difficult, right? Because if you couldn't be hurt or damaged or defeated or end up in failure, then where's the moral courage in the endeavor? It has to be that the fragility is built into the courage. And so it's not a reason not to engage in it at all. In fact, quite the contrary. And so, well, and so then, what do? Well, you put the city back together, and maybe the way you want it, so that it's functional and efficient and beautiful, and so that people can flourish there, and flourish in a manner that makes them feel that the unbearable catastrophe of being is worth it for the experience. That's what you're aiming at. And it's not an impossibility. It's not an impossibility. And then not only do you repair the city when you do that, but you make yourself the sort of thing that continually repairs the city. And that's even better. That's the end goal, because it's not the repair of the city that's the goal. It's the transformation of yourself into the thing that continually repairs the city. And so there's just no reason for that not to happen. And the more it can happen, the better.
It's not sufficient to build back. We have to build back better.
All right. So continuing with our theme, what ethics and what real ethical activity looks like, this is a very different kind of look, right? So he's well dressed, he's on YouTube, but he's in front of a TED Talk or something like that. He is a professor, a Canadian professor. He's a clinical psychologist, very well respected. He was a professor at Harvard for a while. He didn't make tenure. He didn't become full professor because of health issues and other things. But he is now a tenured professor, I think, at University of Toronto or something like that. It has a very different aesthetic, right? This is a very different presentation. But it's not just a different aesthetic, it's a different ethic too, right? There's ethical activity going on here. It's more professionalized, not like an amateur like the first person we saw, Aaron Clark. But philosophy and ethics comes in all sorts of forms. And this is just, again, the anti-snobbery theme that I'm trying to share with you. This guy is a professor, but he's an anti-establishment professor. Do you see what I'm saying? So he's for the little guy. What do I mean? What is he talking about? Well, he's saying right where you are, there's meaningful ethical activity. You see that? Do you see what he was saying? Don't say, I'm going to become ethical when I get my PhD. I'm going to get ethical when I move into the suburbs. No, that's the wrong understanding. The location of ethics is right where you are. And it has a collateral effect. If you truly adopt that commitment to being ethical right where you are, you're not gossiping about your coworkers, you're doing a diligent job, you're conscientious, the collateral effect is the last thing we're going to cover in class, which is existentialism. It's going to make your life meaningful. because he talked about that rich complexity you're surrounded by. If I walk into this classroom and all I see are chairs and distances between them and something like that, yeah, phenomenologically, that's very poor. But if I've cultivated the ethical activity of actually doing my job and being eager to serve my students, this becomes a completely different experience, a meaningful one. You see what I'm saying? You're looking forward to teaching. Yeah, you're at University of Miami. Yeah, you're at Lakeside Pavilion. Who cares? Yeah, who cares? Okay, I get it. It's not the most glamorous thing ever. But on the other hand, from an inner subjective standpoint, in terms of my experiences of myself, which is the only thing that matters, it's not so bad. And I have a vector. It's not like I'm stuck here. Life is dynamic. I don't know where I'll be tomorrow, but I have a kind of, you know what a vector is? It's like there's a direction. You know what I mean? I'm going in a certain direction. And there was a great German philosopher called Goethe. He said, I find that the great thing in life is not so much where I am as what direction I'm going. You see what I'm saying? That's a lot more meaningful than where you are. And that's what Jordan Peterson was saying. He was saying, look, the fact that you are on the move towards something better is even more meaningful than being kind of okay. You know what I mean? All right, guys, we have a lot more to cover, so let's go on. There are going to be 2 more videos. Again, keep in mind this idea of what ethical activity looks like. From some people's perspective, it's not going to look like ethical activity, especially if they're cynical. You know what I mean? You know what cynicism is? A cynical person is a person who says any action that someone performs is always done from a bad or base motive. You see what I'm saying? So they're never gonna be charitable or optimistic about why it was done. You know, you give people welfare, they're gonna say, oh, he's pandering and he's trying to corrupt people and create welfare schemes and keep poor people down. You free up the markets, you release regulation, and you increase competition. Healthy competition, people say he's pandering to the wealthy. You see what I'm saying? That's cynicism. You can't win. Okay. Keep that in mind when you look at what I'm about to share with you.
This was something that was very exciting. We thought this would be the first country. He's a great leader. Mohammed's a great leader. And we're very happy that he was the first country, I would say. And you're going to see many other things happening in the Middle East over a fairly short period of time. But this is the first time in more than 25 years. And UAE is big stuff. UAE is very powerful, very strong,
Do you know when
has one of the strongest militaries. It's big stuff.
Do you know when the delegations are going to meet specifically?
Very soon. I guess they'll be setting up the meetings. Do you have any time?
I think the next several weeks, Mr. President. Then we expect that there will be a meeting here at the White House with the leaders.
There'll be an
as well.
official signing at the White House over the next few weeks, okay? And other than that, we'll meet you at 5:30 or so. We'll talk and we'll actually take one of your questions, okay?
All right, guys.
All right, there you have it, the president announcing a new U.S. negotiated deal between Israel and the United Arab Emirates to resume or to establish full diplomatic relations, a peace deal, if you will. I want to bring in Ben Tracy, who is at the White House. Ben, you've been listening to this press conference. This is sort of I would say, you know, a needed win for the president as he has just, you know, 80 days or so before the election. And when he was elected into office, there was much talk about hammering out, bringing peace to the Middle East. And then we just sort of didn't hear much after that. Some highlights here and there, but nothing major. So this is a pretty significant announcement.
It is, and you know, you're right. The president's facing some pretty stiff domestic headwinds as he goes into re-election, both with coronavirus and the impact on the economy. And as often happens for presidents when they're in trouble at home, they look for wins abroad. And certainly this would be one for the president. This is a pretty big deal, you know, for the United Arab Emirates. to now recognize Israel, which is not something it had done before, for them to have full diplomatic relations. I believe this is the first agreement of this kind for Israel since 1994, when they signed a peace deal with Jordan. So this is very significant. And part of what is driving this is, this did not come out of the blue. The president said this is something they've been working on for a long time now. And in fact, relations between the two countries have been growing more warm over the course of several years. And part of that is they do have a shared interest. They have a shared interest in their opposition to Iran's nuclear program and Iran's growing influence in the region. So it makes sense strategically for these two countries now to come together. And you heard the president kind of tease the idea that there might be other agreements of this kind in the region between Israel and its neighbors. And a lot of that is to kind of hedge against the influence of Iran in their neighborhood.
Oh, that is actually quite fascinating. He also sort of brought up the idea of America achieving energy independence in relation to this. Can you sort of shed a little more light on that?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting to hear the president say we no longer need to be there, meaning we don't have to be in the Middle East anymore because we don't need your oil. That is not something American presidents, for the most part in the past, have acknowledged so bluntly in terms of the reason that we're there is because we need your oil. The president is saying because of domestic production here in the United States, we don't actually have to be there for our energy needs. We are there now as a friend to help solve some of the problems in the Middle East. Of course, one of the big problems in the Middle East does go back to Iran, and the relationship between President Trump and the Iranian regime is not at all a good one. So that is something that still needs to be solved. But we should not gloss over this too quickly, because one of the big points in this is that Israel has apparently agreed to suspend its annexation of land in the West Bank, home to many of the Palestinians. And if that is indeed the case, and if they indeed do follow through on that, that could be opening the door ever so slightly for renewed talks between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And those talks have really been on ice for quite a while now.
I think that's a really, really interesting observation. I know we're going to talk to Dan Raviv, but of course, when it comes to these sort of agreements, there are so many different players in the region that one has to consider the impact, of course, for the U.S. Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu who has had a tough go of things in terms of his ability to maintain sort of his position in Israel. There's several elections trying to determine whether or not he indeed would remain in office, obviously facing allegations of corruption and all sorts of other things. And then there are the other countries in the region that are watching this. Have we heard at all from any of the countries in the region reacting to this announcement?
I have not seen any reaction yet. Obviously, we're just hearing this within the last couple of minutes, so there certainly will be reaction throughout the day, and it'll be interesting to see what the other countries in the neighborhood do. But you mentioned Netanyahu, and certainly the close relationship between President Trump and Netanyahu would have been a driver behind this. You also heard the president give quite a bit of credit, or at least as much credit as President Trump likes to give to other people, to his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who part of his vast portfolio here at the White House has been the broad idea of Middle East peace. So certainly this is something that he has been working on. You also heard President Trump joke that he thinks this should be called the Donald J. Trump Accord. He was clearly joking in the moment. I can tell you that this apparently is officially going to be called the Abraham Accords. It won't have President Trump's name on it.
Yeah, you know what they say about jokes, though? There's always a little nugget of truth in there. All right, thank you so much, Ben, for jumping in front of the camera so quickly.
Okay. So, continuing with our theme, I claim that there is wonderful ethical activity in that 6-minute video, ethical activity of the highest kind, bringing peace to a place that has had turbulence and war and just terrible instability. There's ethical activity of the highest kind. Our president has orchestrated this in the Middle East, in Israel's relations with UAE in this video, but it's been happening to many different countries over the past few months. Not just UAE, Sudan. Sudan is a primarily Muslim country. Israel now has normal relations with them and others as well. So, I mean, if you're a statesman, if you're a president, this is the kind of thing we need, right? Peace, 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 peace. If you have peace, then you create an environment where people can engage in other activities, like economic activities, other things, you know what I mean? This is the kind of environment we need. But if you have prejudice in your heart and you're cynical, you will not recognize this as an ethical activity. You see what I'm saying? Certain people from certain media outlets, for example, either won't show this at all, or it'll just get covered cynically. So, you know, the ethical activity will get eclipsed or subsumed by the politics and the political interests. Oh, this is obviously an attempt at getting reelected. Oh, this is obviously pandering to his Jewish following or his Jewish constituency. Or, oh, you know, he's only doing this so he can build some more towers in Jerusalem. That kind of thing. I'm just warning you about the dangers of cynicism. Yeah. I've grown a lot since I moved to Miami, and I have a godfather who's from Cuba. And for understandable reasons, he is an immigrant from Cuba, right? So he was born in 1949, came to the US a few years later. And as soon as he arrived, he heard news that, oh, wait, a revolution has happened. We're going to have communism in Cuba. It's going to be great. And then he went back and he thought that Castro was going to be a great leader, you know, very like loving and caring, you know, the ideal communism, a utopia. But it turned out quite differently. It was a military dictatorship that was totalitarian. And they came back to the US, and like many Cubans, they become staunch Republicans because Republican principles are more anti-government than democratic principles. You see what I'm saying? So this is someone who I came to know and love, and you know, we act silly and goofy together, but we also talk politics, and it civilized me because I had to choose which thing was going to frame which. Am I going to take the frame of my politics and then put him within that framework? So identify him as someone conservative and political, and then say, that's how I locate him. And whatever he does, whatever ethics he does, I'm going to be cynical about it since he's in that box. And that's how I identify him. So whatever interests he has, those are the ones fueling whatever ethical activity he does, right? If he takes me out to dinner or whatever, I just get cynical. Or am I going to frame it using ethics and humanity? Am I going to recognize him as a person with feelings and motives and cares, just like everyone else? And in the context of framing his humanity, I try to understand the motivations for his ideology. Where was he born? You know, what was he reacting to when he became a conservative or a libertarian or a Republican? You see what I'm saying? Sometimes that growth can only happen spontaneously. No amount of reading about ethics can really do that. A part of some things just have to happen naturally through living. But in a class like this, I think it's so important that I raise your consciousness about your full potential to be Buddhist, Zen. Remember the Zen we talked about? The Zen goes through life fluidly, unattached to anything. Remember, your ego is just a bunch of attachments to the beast. Remember that? You think that I am a conservative or I am a liberal or this or that. You're attached to it. And so when the world shakes your foundations, you suffer. You're pathetic because you're attached. You see what I'm saying? But even though you suffer, you will grow. Your ego will diminish. And you'll be like, I'm not going to judge people based on their ideology. I'm not going to judge people because they're divorced. I'm not going to judge people because they don't look like me. I'm not going to judge people because they're not my type of romantic interest or because they're not beautiful. You see what I'm saying? All right, we have one more to go. I wonder what time it is. What time is it? Okay, good. We have enough time. Okay.
years ago, it would have been hard to believe that we could repeal. 8 years ago, it would have been hard to believe that we could repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, pass the Hate Crimes Act, and legalize marriage equality, all with one president. But yes, we could, and yes, we did. President Obama, we are all so grateful for everything you've done in the name of equality, kindness, and love. This message is for you.
President Obama.
I want to say there are no words, but actually there are. There just aren't enough words.
I'm going to try to do this without crying.
I really just wanted to kind of take a moment to really appreciate you.
You presided over a period of time that turned out to be, in many ways, one of the most positive periods of time ever in the lives of gay Americans.
I could not believe that the future president of the United States said the word gay in the first 3 minutes of his victory speech, and that was just the tip of the iceberg.
Obama, how can we ever thank you?
For changing the way people thought about us, and honestly, the way I thought about myself.
For all you have done for the LGBTQ and any other letters they might have added since I last checked community.
For making LGBT people more visible.
For fighting for a world where I can raise my daughter to love whoever she wants to love.
Your courage, your humanity, your kindness, your wit, your wisdom.
For tearing down barriers.
Thank you for acknowledging that love is love.
I'm here at dinner with my family at the house. And we just wanted to join everybody that's already spoken by saying thank you so much to our president,
Obama.
That's his Obama song.
You created the first national HIV/AIDS strategy.
You had the first transgender presidential appointees.
Fighting to ban conversion therapy.
Marriage equality.
Anti-bullying, your federal task force.
You repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
The Matthew Shepard Hate Crimes Prevention Act.
For allowing us the ability to have crazy children that do stuff like this.
Will you sit down? It's dinner time.
My daughter saying to me, Obama helped us be a family.
The work that you've put in has really made a massive difference to people all across the world.
Making immeasurable progress in your time in office.
It's because of you I was able to marry the love of my life, my husband back home, and also this guy.
I was actually able to marry my wife.
I wouldn't have gotten married 2 years ago if it wasn't for you.
Thank you, President Obama. Because of you, I got to marry the girl of my dreams.
We all look to the US as an example, and as a gay man that is going to be getting married to one of you Americans, I just want to say thank you.
You made what seemed truly impossible possible.
You were the first president that even uttered the word transgender, and I hope that you will not be the last.
You helped change the way we are perceived in this country.
It changed my life. It changed my brother's life.
You made us feel included.
That hope is going to stay with me.
Too bad aliens didn't come during your presidency. We would have been so proud to take them to our leader.
It's actually astonishing how much you've managed to achieve in these short 8 years.
It changed the country and it changed the world.
I love you.
I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you for talking about us. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We heart you.
Thank you, President Obama.
Thank you, Obama.
When's your birthday, President Obama?
Does it look like a heart?
Thank you so very, very, very much.
Thank you. We'll miss you.
And also, text me when you get this.
All right, so again, I find amazing ethical activity there, but remember I told you that in Dante's Divine Comedy, you don't actually see God. You know, Virgil, a Roman poet, guides Dante through the Inferno and the Purgatory, but the last part, Paradise, he gets his girlfriend, Dante's girlfriend is called Beatrice. She's the one who guides him up into glory. But you never actually see God, certainly not a personified God, but God is reflected in the structure of the universe. Remember me saying that? So here you don't actually see Obama, but you see a reflection of the effects of the ethical activity. You see what I'm saying? So in the smiles and the joy and the praise and all of that, well, that's a reflection. And that's what you might call a legacy. You know what I mean? Something you leave behind. So let's look at the time. So again, if you're cynical, you might say, if this is covered on a certain channel, they'll probably say, oh, that was just done to get the gay vote, you know. That's how he got reelected, or I don't know, something like that. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm raising our consciousness about what true ethical activity truly is. I'm challenging certain stereotypes that only academic ethics is true ethics, something like that. We're going to cover some frameworks, and they're going to be very technical, and maybe even calculate or, I don't know, measure whether or not you're being ethical. But that's a bit artificial and remote. I'm suggesting that ethics is a lot more spontaneous and a lot more familiar, and it's just not that complicated. You come to university to get a degree, so you got to complicate things for you a little bit. And the world is complex. The world can get complicated, but the idea that the average everyday person have no idea what ethics is, I don't believe that. The average everyday person is decent, you know? And the ethical activity we're talking about is well distributed throughout his entire life. He was born into a house or a home. The ethical activity with him begins with him being taught manners and grooming and personal hygiene. All of those things have deep, deep implications for how you interact with people, how people perceive you, how people feel your respect for them. You know what I mean? All of that is ethical activity. But I mean, people won't teach whole courses about that. I mean, maybe they will, but you know what I mean? It's not glamorous, it's not interesting, you know? But that's the average person. And that's also the non-average person too. We all have the same kind of origin, you know? But sophistication and artificiality, that gets promoted a lot in academic environments. I'm just reminding you that, you know, there's the other side of the story too. It's not very publishable, you know what I mean? All right, so we have an election coming up very soon. My only point with this is something like, just don't be cynical. Cynicism, I think, is anti-ethical or unethical. Because what a cynic is doing is he's getting attached to the idea that it's all a show, it's all a facade. You know what I mean? People are just putting on a front. So whatever you do, whatever you decide to do, whether it's in your own best interest or for the common good, for the greater good, I just really strongly encourage you, do it, as long as you do it authentically and sincerely, and you think it's in the best interest of everyone, I think that's a really good thing. Now, the word interest is very interesting, right? Because is an interest more deontological? Is it kind of like a motive? Or is an interest more a concern with the means to a particular end or result? Is it more consequentialist or is it more deontological? If someone thinks about what is in my best interest and what is in the best interest of society when they vote, is that more deontological? Are they trying to identify the right motive to vote from, or are they trying to look at what's the best consequence for voting one way? What do you think? I just want some reactions. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I mean, this is just a practical way of really thinking deeper about what the difference is between consequentialism and deontology. Remember, deontology is all about to do an action with the proper motive, which is duty. And it doesn't matter what the consequences are. The fact that you did it with the right motive, that's what makes your action good or bad or right or wrong. Whereas consequentialists say, no. It's not all about motive. It's about the end or the outcome of the consequence. Go ahead.
I think this election in a pandemic, all like the divide we have, a lot of people voting consequentialism type of action.
Yeah, what outcome is going to come out of it?
What's
Yeah. So which outcome is going to get rid of the pandemic? Which outcome is going to get us out of the recession? That's a very good point. Go ahead.
I feel obviously there's consequences no matter who gets elected in the election, especially this one. But I think on voting, it has to be from doing it with the intentions, like with good really know what the consequences are gonna be. Like, any candidate say they're gonna do this or that, and most of the time they don't get it accomplished, or at least not as quickly as they say they will.
Excellent, yeah.
So I don't know the way to really know this. I can assume, but.
What you guys are telling me you have a deep understanding of both constitutions and the ontology. The fact that you processed it that way shows me that you really have a difference. When you make consequences a framework, there's a whole lot of uncertainty, and first of all, I don't know what effect I'm going to have. And then second, the person in office, who knows what effect they really have on the economy. That is like very controversial. So that shows an excellent understanding of some of the challenges that come with consequential things. Absolutely. And so now look at that other thing, right? The thing about a motive is that it's private. A consequence is public. A motive is private. So what implications does that have, right? Now, only you and maybe God know what intention you have when you're doing right? You see, and maybe that's constantly of being cynical about consequences, right? You never really know why people did what they did. So instead of measuring an action's value in terms of its instrumental power to produce a consequence, the best thing to do is we start where we are. I mean my own motives. That's what's most precious. And we let go of everything else. Honestly. See what I'm saying? Go ahead, Carter. Oh, you're distracting? Okay. Yeah, so that you guys are showing that you really do understand the essence, the basics of consequentialism and deontology. So now I'm just going to polish up a few points and then we go, because I don't have that much to say. One thing I want to do is, again, snobbery. Snobbery is a very toxic thing. You know, educated people treating uneducated people differently. Again, quote unquote, beautiful people. There's beauty bigotry, right? There's all sorts of elitism. That word elitism is just very like elitism, all sorts of things like that. Of course, there's also reverse snobbery. And politics, reverse snobbery is what we call populism. A leader who goes to the people and says, all the elites are corrupt. Anyone in the establishment. You see what I'm saying? That's a kind of reverse snobbery, where you're saying, if you are privileged in any way, you are incapable of being good. You're just corrupt, or you're low value. Yeah. Religion, obviously, right? So many words caused by religion. And over what? People are just attached to the thing that they were taught when they were young. That's all that's going on. And so, you know, some people believe in many gods, other people believe in one God. I mean, you kill people because they're polytheists. I mean, the word ethical, the word being ethical, is just, its scope is so large, you know? I mean, it's unethical to discriminate against someone or hurt them just because they're a different religion from you. I mean, and religion is supposed to be all about ethics. Some people might say religion, in a philosophy of religion class, some people might say what religion truly is, it's ethics that's passionate. That's all it really is. You know what I mean? It's just passionate ethics. So instead of doing a good action because you figured out that it's the right thing to do, you do the right action because you're full of compassion. You know that one. All right. Politics. Again, I just told you about cynicism, right? The way political people treat each other, and then the way people treat each other because of which political person they follow, which ideology, can turn us into barbarians and Greeks very quickly. You see what I'm saying? Riots and civil wars, that kind of thing. Language. You can hear some people react to someone else because they speak a different language. I mean, this is not beyond imagination, right? You know what I'm talking about. And then the small customary things. In one culture, punctuality might be a really big thing. And then in other cultures, it's not. No one is getting offended by the fact that everybody invited to the wedding showed up 2 hours late. Because it's the custom. And maybe it's a kind of spontaneity too, because it is accepted, you know. People will get here when they get here. You know, the ceremony will go on when it goes on. So this is very chill, like in Kenya, where my father is from. They have this word called, they have this saying, Hakuna Matata. You've heard that, right? Lion King, what does it mean? Hakuna Matata, what does it mean? Yeah, exactly, no worries. Guys, that is a deep ethical statement. It's a reflection of an entire culture's attitude towards life, both the biggest things and the trivial things. You know what I mean? If you approach everything in your life like no worries, that's a kind of Zen. Again, you just don't get attached to whatever brief obstacles coming your way. Don't get attached to your own, grudges. And, you just let bygones be bygones. It's a kind of fluidity. You see that? There's no worries. No matter what happens, there's no worries. No matter what happens, it's not really a big deal. You know what I mean? That's Zen. That's again Zen and power. All right. So notice I'm jumping from continent to continent. Now we're talking about Zen Buddhism. We're talking about African philosophy or whatever. We're talking about European consequentialism. Again, the point is this thing called ethics is well distributed. There are no monopolies. And it's rather spontaneous. And we don't give enough credit to our parents, our mothers and fathers, who show us all this affection and care. And that's one of the biggest ethical activities there is. The maturity it takes to be self-sacrificing and care for someone else, whether they're being bored, or whether they're on their deathbed, or whether they're sick in the hospital. You know what I mean? Maturity. And this is what my dissertation is on. That's what I'm getting my PhD on. Maturity, in my opinion, is the cardinal virtue. It's the cardinal virtue because something like courage or self-control or moderation, those are essential. But you don't show them as often, or if you don't need them, you don't show them as often as you need to show maturity. In respecting others, whether on the subway or in a class, help show maturity. You know, if you should have had courage, maybe on the battlefield, maybe asking a girl out on Bumble, that's kind of courage. But you're not constantly exercising. But maturity is very ubiquitous. You know what I mean? It's like constantly. You know what I mean? Your daily routines might seem boring and drudgery and why do I have to do that? If you reflect a little bit on it, a lot of those routines, a lot of those manners that you have deep ethical meanings and they embody maturity. You know what I mean? Things like hospitality. Hospitality is very ethical. The idea that there are certain cultures where as soon as the guest comes in, the people in the house rush to offer him some sort of beverage. In some cultures, it's a hot beverage. In some cultures, it's a cold beverage. Now, to some sort of academic anthropologist, this is just a custom, you know? But I'm arguing that this is a deep ethical activity. It's kind of like the respect thing, right? If the first thing a guest comes in, no matter who he is, stranger or relative, the first thing you do, your first inclination is to greet him. Hello, how are you doing? Welcome, sit down. I got something for you to eat. Oh, where I just came from, I already had some tea. No, well, you're in my house. You can have some tea with me. That person is showing supreme ethical activity. You know what I'm saying? Like we need that. It's not empty. He's not going through the motion. Well, typically it's she, but an Oriental or Eastern culture is will be probably the lady of the house. But you know what I mean, right? These aren't empty gestures for the most part. And then finally, guys, this familiarity. Expressing familiarity. And that's weird, right? Because politeness, if taken to an extreme, creates too much distance. You know what I mean? If you don't show familiarity at some point in your relation with people, kind of like me being spontaneous and showing you some guy who's cursing. If you don't let yourself loose a little bit, you're communicating the idea that, there's a boundary. You know what I mean? All right. So guys, takeaway. Maybe the highest ethical activity, something kind of plain and not so glamorous. It's just called being humane. Humanity. Which is, I haven't figured out the difference between humanity and maturity yet, but I do think that the most mature people are also the most humane. And what does humanity? Humanity has a virtue, something like a deep understanding of our virtues and our flaws, and an accommodation for both. If you're too self-righteous, you're not really humane. You see what I'm saying? Because if you say, this is how things are done at the practical level, right? You've got your academics and professors over here. They're problematic because at a theoretical level, they won't register anything that disturbs their theories, right? But what about the practical level? Someone who says, this is Sharia law, and this is how it's done, and there are no deviations. Well, that's going to be inhuman because you're not accommodating particular cases. It's spontaneity. You know what I'm saying? You're rigid. You're treating yourself like an act, like a machine, and you're treating the person you're judging like a machine. And that's dehumanizing. It's not humane. Sometimes you gotta let loose. In order to truly be virtuous, in order to truly be ethical, you might even have to quote unquote sin. Hang out with people you wouldn't usually hang out with. I don't know. You find yourself at a gay bar at 3 a.m. You're totally straight. Again, that's spontaneity that Jesus was showing. Remember? Jesus was very humane. But he was humane in a way that was very plain. I just want to emphasize that, the plainness of it. There's nothing spectacular about it. He's just mixing in, blending in with that familiarity. To be familiar with someone is to make them comfortable, keep them at ease. And that's what the Pharisees or the very strict people can't stand. So like, how can you forgive someone who's a homosexual? How can you forgive a prostitute? How can you let Mary Magdalene wash your feet affectionately in public? You see what I'm saying? That's almost like obscenity. Like if someone shows up naked somewhere, right? Just like you don't know what to do. But all I'm saying is, of course, I'm not saying you should go out of your way just to do strange things or weird things. All I'm saying is, fitting in is just as ethical sometimes as standing out. You see what I'm saying? All right, guys. Maybe one way to summarize humanity, being human, is just to cultivate in yourself mindfully a kind of sweetness to you. Kind of sweetness. And there was one philosopher, Matthew Arnold. He's mainly known as a poet and a literary critic, but I think he's very philosophical. He said, culture, to truly be culture, is to have sweetness and light. What is he saying? By sweetness, he means something like to have a temper that's very mellow and very reasonable and accommodating. You know what I'm saying? Someone like that, yeah, he might think that stealing is bad. But if his roommate steals or something like that, because his disposition is so sweet, he won't judge. And he'll figure out a very tactful way to ask for it back. You know what I mean? That whole disposition of sweetness. And then by light means intellectual insight. So the ability to actually understand things that are happening around. And honestly, this is the kind of thing that religion, I think, is supposed to teach us. But sometimes the institutions that are religious don't do it as perfectly. Okay, that's it, guys. We're out of time. Let's see, Carter, Nick, Sarah, and Dr. Apparently the seats have been moved around the room. So that's it, guys. I'll try and get things graded as soon as possible. I've already graded and sent out 5 and 6. I've got like 18 more. But like I said, I'm really using this new commenting feature since all of you guys are using Microsoft Word. I'm using that comment feature. That way I can really zoom in and comment directly with what you're saying as I think about it and as I see it. So that's in the work, guys. Thank you so much for your patience. Please go out and vote, do the right thing, and I will see you on Monday. Bye.
Did you get my email about Monday? I think I've seen it like a couple days